Hi, Marcus. Good morning. Good
Good
afternoon.
morning.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. Thank you. Yeah, it's thanks for joining me on this Friday morning for me, but Friday lunchtime for yourself.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
hopefully
no
this is
worries.
kind of middle of your day, finishing up.
I think it's
So
a little better for
yeah,
me.
yeah, exactly. That's okay. This is a good way to start my day.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
got a coffee in hand, chatting
Yeah.
with you. So yeah, but yeah, maybe introduce yourself for those who don't know you, and maybe about your kind of current role that you're performing at.
Yeah, yeah. So, hey everyone. I'm a developer advocate at PubNub, and the main focus of this job, for those who aren't aware with like developer advocacy, is focusing on creating demos and building community connections. But specifically for PubNub, so that would be anything in like the real-time realm of connectivity, and helping developers understand like how they can put this interactivity into their applications. So whether that's like for different verticals like gaming or live events or anything, that benefits from this instant communication. And I've also at PubNub led other initiatives around AI or data experiences. And I'm always looking to like kind of explore new ways of trying to connect kind of that AI realm to real time interactivity in that sense. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Nice. Yeah, no, I mean, you and I have worked together for what, pardon me, about 2 years now, I
Yeah,
think.
two
No,
years, 2.5 years now. So
yeah, like two
yeah,
and a half years. So, yeah, no, I mean, for those who don't know, yeah, Marcus does a fantastic job at, I mean, conferences. He does makes really good like demos. Definitely the better developer than myself. So I always like to rely on Marcus for anything like developer related, just because he does a great job. But kind of related to that, I mean, what did you kind of do before PubNub? Were you in development? Were you in like marketing? Did you do, something else? Yeah, I'm kind of curious to know more about that.
yeah. So before PubNub, I was actually like a founder of like another startup for 2 years after university, and essentially we created a social media application around interactive polling, which is kind of like my first step into creating real time systems. And we got to scale that to like 5,000 monthly active users. So I really got to experience like the importance of having scalable applications and the difficulty in making those. I also ran another company before that, a consulting company called Perceived Software Solutions, and we helped essentially startups implement scalable technology again, and we help marketing teams lead their kind of technical initiatives. And I feel like that experience shaped a lot into this role, which is like developer advocacy, being able to build something, but also like explain it to like other people. However, I was still really rusty when I first came into developer advocacy, and I feel like this has been like a huge learning process. It's definitely like a very niche role, where usually when you graduate from something like software engineering, you always look for those developers or software engineering roles, and yeah, developer advocacy is just kind of one of those things that is very nuanced for like to company, right? So you always kind of learn on the job there.
No,
Yeah,
that's awesome. I mean, for myself, I just had just some background development
yeah,
experience before joining, for being in developer relations. But no, that's really cool that you have both that kind of like that marketing experience as well as that startup kind of development experience where you
yeah,
can kind
yeah.
of bring, like you mentioned, it's great to like meld those together for DevRel. So, I mean, you kind of answered, kind of like in a way, kind of like what developer relations kind of means to you. Maybe when you're trying to explain this job, maybe it was easier to explain this job to your previous positions to like family members and friends or even other industry professionals. But
Hmm.
what is it kind of like? What's kind of like the most misunderstood part about being in DevRel? Or kind of in your position as developer advocacy, do they look at you and say, "Oh, you just make a bunch of like videos and blogs and things like that"? But it's more than that, Since we're both DevRel, I totally understand that. So,
Yeah,
but yeah, maybe for the people at home.
yeah. That's definitely a major aspect of the job is creating that technical content that's going to get out there and somewhat like just help developers implement a piece of tech or software. I think at its core, developer advocacy is kind of minimizing that friction for developers to go and build something. So, it's kind of like engineering, but instead of like kind of like building a product, you're going and building something for people, like in terms of like demos or technical content, to minimize that friction for them to go and, implement that themselves. And I think it's a mix between, being technical enough to go and do that, but also being able to communicate that in like a clear manner, which was something I really had to practice on too with getting into developer advocacy. Is like, it's not only like coding something, but it's being able to like tell a story kind of like behind your code in a sense. Whether that's like writing or, doing a presentation at a conference or talking to just any other developer at a conference. Because, you're advocating for a product, right? So you have to kind of, be able to tell a story about that product, but also have like a real use case that other developers can use, and it will actually help those developers in that sense. But yeah, that's what it kind of like means to me. I hope I answered that question correctly, but
No. That's a great. I was just curious because whenever I tell people like what I do, they're like,
yeah,
okay, so like you're like a content creator. I'm like, I mean, in a way,
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of, but that's not exactly what we do. So no, that was a
No,
fantastic answer,
I
Marcus.
always struggle trying to explain this position to other people. Trust me,
Yeah, like
it's a
when
lot of moving parts to it.
it's like whenever we're like at like a holiday party or something, my wife will say, introduce me, and she's like, Oliver, why don't you explain what you do? And I'm
Yeah,
like, oh,
yeah.
okay, then I'll, but no, you did a much better job of explaining kind of what we do, because usually I'll get lazy and say like, oh yeah, where I create like resources for developers and things like that. And they're like, okay,
Sometimes I
and I don't
just
think
say
they really know what that
I'm just
means.
a developer. I
I'm a
just wear a
developer.
different hat.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's like DevRel is, like you said, is a very niche kind of like industry. And really it's prevalent in like kind of like the tech industry where
Yeah.
people actually know what that is. And it's not even been around for that long. I think it's been officially a career since like the 2010s, like early 2000s, maybe even
Yeah,
like the
I
2010s
would
kind of
say
thing.
so, kind of around that.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know, I think when we went to DevRel Con in New York,
Hmm.
I remember there was like a presentation, and I think it was Twilio, and they kind of set the foundation for developer relations engineering and all that. I think
Yeah.
before that, this had a lot of different names, like, if I can even say the words, like developer evangelist and
There's a lot of different roles, right, in the industry, and I think it kind of differs between companies, but we all sort of do the same thing in terms of the end goal, right? Was it's just to help out developers and
yeah,
make their lives easier when trying to use products. Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
absolutely. So yeah, and I'm kind of curious. You talk about kind of making, excuse me, making like developers' lives easier, or making things easier to understand. Is there like something that you worked on recently that kind of makes you kind of go back and think that you did something very well, or something that really resonated well with people, whether that's like through comments on social media, comments through like YouTube, or even like when you're at a conference, kind of talking with people. Was there something that kind of especially resonated with you?
I made this player matchmaking demo uh, that took one of our products, which was PubNub Illuminate, and we had like a fair amount of use cases for that product, and throughout creating this player matching use case with PubNub Illuminate, I was able to give like a lot of, and this is one side of the job that I didn't really mention before, but it's giving feedback to, the product teams on how to, enhance these products, or to like kind of like, what bugs to patch, what's the most important thing to fix in this product for developers, right? And, through this use case, I was able to identify and have conversations with a lot of other developers on, what we need to prioritize for this product, what we need to fix. And I thought that was like a really cool use case to bring to GDC or Unreal Fest, right? It also, I felt like through making that player matchmaking use case, I was able to have like really in-depth conversations with it, which I found was like another metric of success, I guess, within developer advocacy, which I was able to just get like really deep on what they were trying to build and how we could repurpose this to kind of, again, like kind of minimize that friction into what they were building. So I just liked how it opened that doorway up a little bit, rather than having like just like a really shallow conversation, or just like more of like, it really allowed me just to like, get really technical with other developers, or if they weren't developers and they were product people, it allowed me to still kind of see like where we could, implement this product into their, like how this product would help them, in that sense. So I think that piece of work resonated with me a lot. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, especially with like skill-based matchmaking, it's as someone who plays a lot of games myself, as you can kind of tell in the background, it's always talked about, but a lot of times we don't know how it works behind the scenes, or it's so complicated that you just kind of shy away from it. So, that I've created, I added in your skill-based matchmaking demo kind of into the video, and I highly recommend checking out because it's really cool. Kind of helps explain some of the nuances, shows how it works. I'm assuming there's like a GitHub repository that you can also go and people can go and check out the code. And I'm assuming that's public, right?
Yeah, okay, it's just cool. Called I called it a SBMM engine, so it stands for skill-based matchmaking engine, but just for short. But yeah, feel free.
Link is flashing on the screen. So
yeah. So feel free to check that
cool.
out. Yeah.
Sweet. Awesome. Yeah, and you mentioned kind of speaking to this is the part that for kind of more of like for what I like to also talk about as well is you mentioned the part of explaining your skill-based matchmaking demo to people at like conferences, as well as like product managers and like maybe not as like technical, like nitty-gritty code. How do you balance that in your content? So in terms of like when you're making, or even not even content, even just explaining it to people, do you like shift your tone in terms of how you're explaining it? Do you make your content basically technical but easy enough to understand that anyone reading it's like, oh, okay, I may not understand the code, but I'm following along with what you're doing. How do you balance that in terms of when you're actually working on that?
Yeah, so it's sometimes a lot harder like in person, I would say, because it's like more like on the spot, but. Yeah, it's definitely a good point. With developer advocacy, like, knowing who you're talking to and either like scaling up and down that technical jargon that you're previously used to using is very important. So if it's like a developer, I'll probably use all the technical jargon that I want to say, but yeah, if it is like a product manager, with someone who is just like less technical in general, you do have to like scale up and down, like kind of like what you're saying in terms of like that technical jargon for sure. But
yeah, absolutely. No, that's a great answer. Because yeah, that's something sometimes I struggle with in terms of creating content, especially like depending on the type of like product that we're talking about. Sometimes I want to get more technical, but I'm like, oh wait, I need to scale back. Or the opposite, where if I'm getting too technical, I need to scale back because our blogs are getting to be like 15 pages long when it only needs to be like 3 pages long.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. I guess kind of in terms of like the content that you've been working on recently, it sounds like it's been mostly focused on kind of the gaming industry, sort of like the skill-based matchmaking, things like that. I mean, has there been kind of like, aside from that, kind of like a recent trend that you've been really interested in, whether that's like AI related or that's, in the gaming industry or a combination of both, like AI in the gaming industry? I know that's a hot topic right now. Curious your thoughts on anything, maybe that you're interested in or that, you should let other people know that's a hot topic right now.
Yeah. I think everyone's just gonna say AI.
Yeah. That's the easy answer, right?
It's the most trendy thing right now. But
yeah, or trending answer.
outside of just like other AI tools, that you can use like within your application, like what I've been doing for, content and development alike is just using AI as like an assisted developer. So these like through AI, like assisted development, it just allows you to kind of not get so deep onto a certain aspect of code and kind of go into like more of like the solution architect style. So I don't make it like do everything for me. I don't just go into ChatGPT and say like generate this, but it does help like speed up the process of any development that you would want to do. And the same way with honestly like content at this point. yeah, maybe don't generate the whole, you know, piece of content through AI, but if you can more so act like an editor, and it could help you change. Actually, going back to what we were saying before is, scaling up and down that technical jargon. Let's say I go and write a blog or a how-to. It's actually one use case I use it for. Is I will go and write it, but then I could just go paste that blog into AI and say, hey, it's for this audience or this audience. And it will actually change the tone in which I'm talking about a certain topic, which I think is like a really cool use case for AI, which actually, really relates to, developer advocacy in that sense as well. I guess another trend that I've been seeing more so, and, probably from the fact that I also work at PubNub and we have solutions like these, are like low code or like no code platforms. I feel like those are like really, really trendy right now, where you can take that development time from the developers and, just edit, whatever it is, whatever the low code platform is, you can just edit your software from a dashboard or something. I feel like that is also really trending today in this market as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we even see that in the games industry too, right? I know it's been around for a little bit. The Epic Games is Blueprints, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, that's kind of like low code, no code. But
Yeah, exactly.
even like you're saying, outside of even outside of the games industry, there's things that are like low code or no code, and yeah, it's cool because it's also pulling in people maybe who were a little more afraid of like the more technical aspect of things. They can actually leverage AI to help build towards things that are kind of towards their end goal. So
Exactly.
I know there's a lot of like ethical and controversial concerns about like generative AI in terms of like AI images and videos and things like that, but especially like the content where you're kind of adjusting the tone, or even helping create like kind of like skeleton like code or skeleton kind of like like a skeleton blog where then you can kind of go through it and change things. Yeah, I use it for this exact same thing, and I think it's fantastic. I try to treat it like a calculator or like a tool
Yeah,
where I could
exactly.
do the job
Yeah,
myself, but it's just gonna take longer.
yeah.
So
Yeah, it's
absolutely
definitely
nice.
saved. I feel like a lot of people like a bunch of time. I guess there's like a way to go about it where like you are essentially just like cheating your way through certain tasks, but there's also like that way of like what you're saying is like, yeah, just use it as like, a calculator in the same sense, where if you if you've done the work, you've written the blog, and you need to change like the tone or something of it, or you need an editing suggestion, then like it's a very, very useful tool, and that saves like hours a day, right? So yeah, in that sense, yeah, I think everyone should be using it.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, and like you're saying too, it it saves a lot of time, which is the nice part. I know we've seen the memes of like coding, right, where it's like it'll generate code in about 5 minutes, but then you'll spend 6 hours debugging it. But in all seriousness, it is a great tool currently, even in its current state, to help kind of like speed up the process of things that would normally take a while. So
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
absolutely. Cool.
Yeah.
I kind of went into it, we kind of went into a good tangent, but a tangent about kind of the content stuff itself. But I kind of want to bring it back to kind of the developer relations side of things, even though I was the one who asked you. So how does that work? Anyways, so I mean, in terms of when you create content for your company, things like that, whatever you're making, something that's always I've struggled with is how do I measure that it was successful or not, in terms of me personally thinking it was successful versus maybe what does the company think in terms of success, in terms of like, either at PubNub or just in terms of what you've seen other companies think of what a successful piece of content looks like. So I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, yeah. As actually, I think there's like, yeah, there's the analytic side to it where,
Hmm.
if I release a piece of content, it's successful based on how many how many clicks it gets or views in this sense. Um, but I feel like it depends on like what you are writing about or building in that sense. Like sometimes you're going to release a piece of content and very few amount of people are going to essentially care about that topic. It's not going to be like a really prevalent topic in like the market. And in that
Yeah.
sense, it's not really measured through the same metric of like a view count. I would say. Let's say, for example, I release like a piece of content and like someone reaches out to me saying, oh, this like really helped me, and like continue to ask questions about it. Like that could be success in like developer relations. Or, you know, what I mentioned before, which is like someone reaches out to you about your piece of content and they go, oh, like this didn't work for me, or like the same way it worked for you, and they're having like problems with the product or something, and then you get to take that feedback and then instantly give it back to like product teams. That's another form of success. So I feel like there is the analytical side, don't get me wrong, like how many views something gets, but I don't think that's like the only thing you should be going for, like releasing that next really popular piece of video content. I feel like you should also be going for, you know, just helping that one person in general. Like that's what, you know, developer advocacy is about.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you get to give advice back to your product team, which is going to help more people in the future, you know, boom, success, right? And in the same sense as like, same amount of success as like, you know, a popular blog post or, you know, video content would be.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think we've all kind of created content in the past that we thought was really good, or we spent a lot of time
Yeah,
with it,
yeah,
and
exactly.
you know, just you know, quantitatively, it just didn't do well. And you know, we've all been there, and it feels bad. But you know, especially if you're like, if it helps at least one person understand a topic or go through something, you know, then you're like, okay, it was worth it. I did a good job, kind of thing. So
Yeah.
yeah, like you said, there's both that aspect of yourself kind of feeling that satisfaction of making something great, versus, you know, like what the company thinks that you have made something great or that's done well, you know, in terms of like analytics and things like that. So
And yeah,
absolutely, yeah.
I think it's about like, even if that one piece or that one like video does not do well, like yeah, don't get discouraged. Like I feel like at the end of the day, it's just about consistency. You can look at like, you know, any YouTuber, let's take them for example. They didn't like get famous or whatever from like their first video, right? Like they had
Hmm.
to release videos over and over and over again. And the same way as like developer advocacy, you know, do presentations, release content, and release videos over and over and over again to stay consistent. And then, you know, at one point you will get that like viral video that, you know, you've been waiting for, but, or that big presentation in front of tons of people, right? But, you know, you're going to have to start small first. You're going to have to start small with like, I started with like webinars, and then I got like, I'm still right now just at like presenting to like small audiences, right? So it takes time, right? And yeah, just consistency to build up that, I want to call it like a portfolio, right? In that sense.
Nice, yeah. No, it's funny that you kind of went into that, because I was going to ask you, you know, like, hey, you know, what kind of advice do you have for people maybe who were developers or marketers kind of going into that, want to get into developer relations? So it's
Yeah.
funny you already kind of brought that up, and kind of talked about that, because yeah, that's exactly the same advice I would have given. Would have been, you know, kind of just start practicing, because I don't know about yourself, but when I first started, it was very I was very nervous in front of a camera. I, you know,
Mm-hmm.
just had a lot of filler words. I just was not comfortable at all. And a lot of the content, you know, I'll go back and look at, I'm like, oh, you know, that wasn't great, but I felt great at the time. And, you know, some of that did better than some of the content I produce now. But as I'm going through and making more things, I definitely feel more comfortable. Like you're saying, it gets better. You're building up your portfolio. So, I mean, do you have any other kind of advice maybe that you would give to developers or even marketers or anyone really? Because I think this is kind of a cool field where we get multiple different disciplines coming into developer relations, because they bring their aspects of the
Yeah,
story or
yeah.
their side of things into the role.
I think my main piece of advice, I would say more so for like developers, which I can comment on more because I, you know, prior to doing this, I was mainly a developer, right? Um, but in that sense, like I would say just make things in public, like make public GitHub repos, comment on Stack Overflow questions, just do things in public and try to help other people. And that really helps like build that portfolio that I was talking about before. Um, and you know, you don't have to be like an expert on this stuff to like go and comment and try to help someone out. You just got to tell them what you know. And I feel like that's like one of like the biggest things that was kind of giving me imposter syndrome when I first came into this job. It's like I
Mm-hmm.
always felt like I had to be like the expert on the topic. But that's like never the case. It's just tell them what you know, and hopefully that helps them out, right? And yeah, you can be wrong, and you will learn over time as well. But yeah, I would say my biggest piece of advice for like developers is definitely just making things in public. I would say.
Absolutely. No, I mean, you touched on a great point where, you don't have to know everything to be able to talk about something. And I
Yeah,
think that's
yeah,
very true for our role because I don't know everything. And sometimes, like you're saying, I'm even kind of in the past scared to bring up stuff because I don't know everything. Even today, there are some things where I may not talk about, but I probably know more than I actually think. And I think that's true for most people. And I think that's a great point because,
hmm
yeah, and like you said, we can or if we don't know, we can just go find out the answer, talk to engineers who do know what they're talking about, or product managers to answer some specific questions and kind of connect people. We're like kind of like the bridge way, right? To whatever path people want to go down. We're like the bridge to help guide people.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, great answer, Marcus. Yeah, that was exactly what I would have said too.
I learned it
So
from
very
you. I
cool.
learned it from
I don't know about that, but thank you. Awesome. Yeah, I mean, we're kind of coming to a close here. I guess I wanted to kind of, maybe wrap this up where, maybe what's kind of like one key takeaway. If anyone who's watching this, whether they're developers, marketers, sales, anyone who wants to get in kind of developer relations, what would you maybe like them to remember from this kind of conversation?
Don't get like too caught up in the metrics of things with developer advocacy. I know we just kind of talked about that. Um, you don't always go and like chase that like next type of like viral post. I would say just focus on what content you can create that would unlock other developers within that industry to really move that needle along for other developers, like because you're gonna one developer is gonna find you and like actually really appreciate that sort of like post that you're making about that. So I would say like that would be like the biggest type of impact you can have for like developer advocacy. And I know everyone wants to jump to like being a developer advocate for AI, but like there's other industries too. But no,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, you can, and I know like some more AI more than others is like really saturated with a lot of like developer advocates. So and their content is definitely going like viral right now. But yeah, you can jump to any vertical really that you would want, and there's going to be developers there that you can support or help. And yeah, I would say that would be like the real kind of impact of like developer relations with like developer advocacy. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Yeah, no, that's a great answer. So yeah, I think that's one of those things where, like you said, we kind of touch in different areas in terms of like our roles, and we do a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
So yeah, fantastic. Cool. Yeah, well, I just wanted, thank you for your time for joining me today in
Yeah.
this little chat that we had. And curious, in case viewers want to see what you're doing and what you're up to, what's the best way to connect with you?
The main way to connect is over LinkedIn. I definitely use that a
Okay.
lot, and I respond to, almost all my messages unless they're specifically marketing targeted ones. I just got like a marketing automation message on my LinkedIn. So
Yeah, yeah, there we go. Yeah,
but yeah, I do respond to messages on LinkedIn, or
cool.
you can follow me on like GitHub. If you just look up my Markus Kohler, my first name, last name. So yeah, reach me at both those places.
Awesome. It'll be flashing on the screen as well. Not flashing, but displayed on the screen.
Yeah.
So cool. Well, yeah, Marcus, thank you very much for your time today. And hopefully, maybe in some time later, I can interview you again and see, if anything's changed, if answers have changed, or if you want to reiterate what you've said in the past. So love
Yeah,
to
yeah.
chat with you
I'd
again.
love to. Yeah, that'd be great.
Awesome.
Sounds good.
Cool. Well, Marcus, thank you so much.
All right,
Appreciate your
thank
time.
you. All right,
All right.
see ya.
Bye.